Very good evening. I am Aishwarya Kapoor with you and you're watching News Tonight on Rajya Sabha television. In the next 30 minutes, we'll get you all the day's top stories from India and around the globe. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu on Tuesday virtually announced the Atal Ranking of Institutions on Innovation Achievements 2020. Speaking on the occasion, he said that India must regain its intellectual leadership and once again emerge as a global hub of learning and innovation.
Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu has once again called upon researchers and scientists to pay greater attention to agriculture and come up with innovations to address the problems faced by farmers. Speaking after releasing the Atal Rankings of Institutions on Innovation Achievements on Tuesday, Naidu said from providing timely information on various issues to farmers to creating cold storage facilities and supplying new technologies should be the focus of innovators and researchers.
The youth of the country must be motivated to join the developmental path more aggressively, while our scientists and researchers must come up with innovations and solutions. They must focus on making the lives of the people more comfortable, happy. Since science is very important, science must also be used to make agriculture more productive and create greater wealth for the farmers.
Emphasizing on the need for India's higher education system to play the role of an enabler and force multiplier to drive Indian innovation and startup ecosystem, the Vice President said innovation must become the heartbeat of education. For this, he urged educational institutions to reinvent themselves to create essential conditions for innovation to thrive.
There was a time when India was known as Viswaguru and students from many countries came to study at our universities. Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, Pushpagiri were some of the great centers of learning. We must regain that intellectual leadership. We must once again emerge as a global hub of learning and innovation.
In the Atal Ranking of Institutions on Innovation Achievements 2020, IIT Madras retained the top rank in the Institute of National Importance Index, followed by IIT Bombay and IIT Delhi. Indian Institute of Science Bengaluru and IIT Kharagpur are ranked 4th and 5th respectively. Among higher educational institutions exclusively for women, the top rank went to Avinashalingam Institute for Home Sciences and Higher Education in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. The second place was clinched by Indira Gandhi Delhi Technical University for Women, New Delhi. In the government and government-aided universities category, the top rank was bagged by Mumbai's Institute of Chemical and Technology, while Chandigarh's Punjab University stood in the second position. Chaudhry Charan Singh Haryana Agriculture University has been ranked third. A total of 674 institutions took part in the rankings. An initiative of the Ministry of Education, Atal Ranking of Institutions on Innovation Achievements aims to promote innovation among Indian educational institutions and assess colleges and varsities on various parameters, including entrepreneurship development and innovative learning methods. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday chaired a meeting with key cabinet ministers on improving multimodal connectivity in industrial hubs. All transport departments have been directed to work together to reduce cost of logistics in key industrial hubs. Amid government steps to reduce high cost of logistics for industry, Prime Minister Modi chaired a meeting on Monday to improve multimodal connectivity in industrial hubs. Government departments have been told there should be no gaps in any mode of transportation in industrial hubs. On several occasions, while emphasizing infrastructure development, the Prime Minister had pointed out the need for integrating the modes of transportation through road, rail, air and waterways.
It will reduce the logistics cost, which are very high for the Indian enterprises. It will increase the price cost margins of the enterprises. The connectivity of rail, road, air and waterways will enhance the infrastructure level and increase the competitiveness of the enterprises, not only in the domestic market but also in the international market. It will enhance the production possibility frontiers of the businesses and create more and more scope for the employment creation with the enhanced capacity utilization. Because now the problem is majorly from the high cost of doing business. There is a lot of improvement in the cost of ease of doing business, but that should be supported by the reduced cost of doing businesses.
The government is currently working to connect the entire country with multimodal infrastructure to facilitate faster transportation of goods. In its efforts to make manufacturing sector more competitive, India is aiming to bring down the cost of logistics to below 10% of the GDP from about 14% at present. The government is also planning to invest over 100 lakh crore rupees in logistics infrastructure over the next 5 years. This is Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV. The Ethics Committee of the Rajya Sabha had a scheduled meeting on Tuesday.
The committee meeting, chaired by BJP MP Shiv Pratap Shukla, lasted over an hour. 6 members were present at the meeting, including new member V. Vijay Reddy. In the Parliamentary Standing Committees on Energy, representatives of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy gave a presentation on Energy Action Plan for achievement of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy target. The Public Accounts Committee also met to prioritize the subjects pertaining to the Ministry of Defence. The Committee on Public Undertakings held discussions in connection with the comprehensive examination of Hindustan Antibiotics Limited. Apart from this, a meeting of the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 was also held in the Parliament House complex.
In some other news, the Supreme Court on Tuesday refused to direct the transfer of money collected under the PM CARES Fund set up for COVID-19 relief to the National Disaster Response Fund.
The Apex Court said, and I quote, "There is no statutory prohibition on contributions made to NDRF and the contributions to PM CARES Fund are voluntary. Funds collected by the PM CARES Fund are entirely different and these funds are funds of charitable trust. Thus, funds need not be transferred." The Apex Court added that the 2019 Disaster Management Plan was sufficient for managing the COVID-19 situation and no fresh plan was needed. It said voluntary contributions could always be made to the NDRF. The PM CARES Fund was set up in March this year to receive contributions for COVID-19 relief operations.
And the Supreme Court on Tuesday reserved its judgment on a bunch of petitions that challenged the University Grants Commission's directive to conclude final year examinations by 30th of September amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Apex Court gave 3 days to all parties to submit their written arguments. The court further stated that interventions will not be permitted. Before reserving its order, the 3-judge bench heard the arguments made by the governments of Delhi, West Bengal, Maharashtra and Odisha. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta and Senior Advocate P.S. Narasimha presented arguments for the UGC's stand on conducting examinations. Replying to the court, the UGC argued that degrees cannot be granted without conducting examinations as it was a statutory mandate. It has further stated that the universities may seek to push back the 30th of September deadline but cannot decide to cancel the examinations. And now an update on India's COVID-19 situation. The novel coronavirus infections in India crossed over 27 lakh on Tuesday. 55,000 new cases were reported on Monday. Take a look at the details. With 55,079 new cases, India's COVID-19 tally has risen to over 27.02 lakh cases. Deaths have touched 51,797 with 876 fresh fatalities. Over 19.77 lakh coronavirus patients have recovered so far, taking the recovery rate to 73.18%. 24.91% or over 6.73 lakh cases are active. India's fatality rate has fallen to 1.94% from 2.89% in the first week of July. India has tested over 3 crore samples, including the highest 8.99 lakh samples on Tuesday. While the test positivity rate has declined from 10% in July to 7.72%, it is still higher than the WHO-approved 5%. High positivity rate indicates the spread of infection.
इतनी भारी संख्या में टेस्ट करने के बावजूद जो हमारा एवरेज दैनिक पॉजिटिविटी रेट है वो लगातार घट रहा है। पहले सप्ताह में ये 10.03% था और अब ये 7.72% हो गया है। ये वीकली एवरेज हम आपको दिखा रहे हैं। अगर आप दैनिक पॉजिटिविटी की दर देखें तो वो लगभग 7.7 से 8% के बीच में है। The important point to note here is that in spite of a sustained level of 7 lakh to 8 lakh tests a day, the positivity figure has come down from 10% to 7.72%.
5 states with the biggest 24-hour jump in total cases are Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. In other updates, Tripura's COVID-19 caseload rose to 7,427 with 205 people testing positive. 62 people have died so far. The state now has 1,943 active cases, while 5,404 people have recovered from the disease. 40 more people, including 13 security personnel, tested positive for COVID-19 in Arunachal Pradesh, raising the state's case load to 2,741. 1,800 people have recovered, 5 have died. 3,257 new COVID-19 cases were reported in Bihar on 17th of August, taking its total count of active cases to 32,626. The state has over 1 lakh cases, including 555 deaths. 9 deaths and 370 new COVID-19 cases were reported from Puducherry on Tuesday, taking the total number of cases to 8,396. Maharashtra accounts for the maximum of cases, followed by Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh and Delhi. Meanwhile, the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID-19 met representatives of leading domestic manufacturers, including Serum Institute of India, Bharat Biotech and Zydus Cadila on Monday to take inputs about the present stage of various candidate vaccines.
जो वैक्सीन का जो इम्पोर्टेंट मुद्दा है, मिशन है, उसके बारे में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने देश को एश्योर किया था अपने स्वतंत्रता दिवस के संबोधन में, और उन्होंने कहा है कि 3 वैक्सीन्स हमारे देश में विकसित हो रहे हैं, डिफरेंट स्टेजेस पे हैं। उनमें से एक वैक्सीन जो है वो फेज़ 3 ट्रायल में आज या कल में पहुंच जाएगा। बाकी 2 जो हैं फेज़ 1 फेज़ 2 में हैं, उनकी हमने रिव्यू किया है सबने मिलके, और उसमें अच्छी प्रोग्रेस हो रही है और वो अपनी स्पीड से आगे ठीक तरह से बढ़ रहे हैं।
3 vaccine candidates are in different stage of human clinical trials in India. Pune-based Serum Institute of India has partnered with AstraZeneca for manufacturing Oxford vaccine in India. The phase 1 and 2 human clinical trials of 2 other vaccines developed indigenously by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with the Indian Council of Medical Research and Zydus Cadila are going on. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that recent increases were driven by young people.
Moreover, unaware that they are infected, they are posing a threat to vulnerable groups. The warning comes on a day when COVID-19 cases crossed 22 million worldwide.
This increases the risk of spillovers to the most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, people in long-term care, people who live in densely populated urban areas and underserved rural areas. We must redouble efforts to stop the virus from moving into vulnerable communities.
The United States tops the global tally of COVID-19 infections with over 5.6 million cases and 1,73,000 fatalities. Several American schools have either cancelled reopening plans or switched back to online learning following a spike in clusters. Brazil had a daily count of over 19,000 cases, raising its tally to over 33.5 lakh. Russia registered 4,892 new cases in a single day to add to a total of nearly 9.3 lakh cases. In Spain, infections spiked with over 1,000 active COVID-19 cases on Tuesday. Several cities, including Madrid and Catalonia, started mass testing. Spain now has over 3.82 lakh cases and 28,646 deaths. Italy has mandated wearing masks at night in public places and between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in places close to bars and pubs. It has also ordered a 3-week closure of dance venues. Several countries in the Asia-Pacific region are also experiencing infection resurgence. On Tuesday, WHO's Western Pacific Regional Director Takeshi Kasai warned that the pandemic has entered a new phase.
What we are observing is not simply a resurgence. We believe it's a signal that we've entered a new phase of the pandemic in the Asia-Pacific.
New Zealand reported 13 new coronavirus cases on Tuesday, 12 of them in Auckland. Australia's Victoria State reported 222 new cases and 17 deaths on Tuesday. The national tally is nearly 24,000 cases and 438 deaths. Japan added 644 new cases on Monday, adding to its tally of 56,857. South Korea reported 246 new cases. Most new infections were linked to a church in Seoul. The recent clusters prompted authorities to suspend in-person church services in the capital and nearby provinces. Meanwhile, China reported no new local COVID-19 cases on Tuesday but had 22 imported cases.
And the health condition of Pranab Mukherjee remained unchanged on Tuesday. The former president continues to be on ventilator support. Doctors attending on him said that his vital parameters are stable and he is being closely monitored.
Mukherjee was admitted to the Army's Research and Referral Hospital in Delhi cantonment on 10th August and he was operated for removal of a clot in his brain. The 84-year-old is in coma and remains critical since then. He also tested positive for COVID-19.
A Rashtrapati Bhavan communique said on Tuesday that Satyapal Malik is transferred as the governor of Goa and appointed as governor of Meghalaya.
Satyapal Malik was appointed as Goa governor in October 2019. He earlier served as the governor of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Malik was at the helm of affairs when Jammu and Kashmir was divested of its special status in August 2019 and split into 2 union territories. Bhagat Singh Koshyari, who is the governor of Maharashtra, has been given additional charge of Goa. Satyapal Malik will be replacing Tathagat Roy, who completed his 5-year tenure serving as Tripura governor for 3 years and the remaining in Meghalaya.
The BJP on Tuesday lashed out at critics over the Facebook controversy. Senior BJP leader and Union Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad said people whose political base had shrunk are seeking to dominate discourse on these platforms. He added that everybody had the right to air views regardless of political ideology.
क्या यह सच्चाई नहीं है कि कुछ लोग समझते हैं कि उस प्लेटफॉर्म पर उनकी मोनोपोली होनी चाहिए, भले ही उनका राजनीतिक वजूद खत्म हो गया हो? It is a hard fact in the country. We need to know that people whose political base has shrunk like anything seek to dominate public discourse on these platforms. That is not right.
The war of words broke out between the BJP and the Congress over a report in the Wall Street Journal claiming that Facebook ignored its hate speech rules when it came to politicians of the ruling party. Citing the report, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi accused the BJP of using Facebook and WhatsApp to influence the electorate. Refuting the charge, Prasad said it was for Facebook to decide what to do regarding the report. He said Facebook had removed hundreds of pages of BJP supporters. Meanwhile, the Congress has written to Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg demanding a high-level inquiry into the conduct of Facebook India leadership team. Moving on in the bulletin, Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has appealed to the steel industry leaders to assist in providing low-cost housing for migrant labourers.
Speaking at a webinar on Atmanirbhar Bharat, fostering steel usage in housing and construction and aviation sector on Tuesday, the minister told PSUs and steel industry leaders to partner with the government in the project. He said the government had set a target of providing 1 lakh such houses, but the industry should build many more steel-intensive, low-cost houses that will be model for others to emulate.
स्टील आज हम दुनिया के दूसरे नंबर की प्रोड्यूसर है। कंस्ट्रक्शन कैपेबिलिटी हमको और बढ़ानी पड़ेगी। कंस्ट्रक्शन कैपेबिलिटी में क्वालिटी को जोड़ते हुए हमको सीपीडब्ल्यूडी, एनबीसीसी, डीएलएफ इस प्रकार की और 100 संगठन बनानी पड़ेगी। ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में, हाउसिंग में, लो कॉस्ट हाउसिंग में, क्वालिटी हाउसिंग में हमको और कैपेसिटी बढ़ानी पड़ेगी।
Also present at the event, Housing and Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Singh Puri called for adoption of new technologies, cost-effective ways, quality consciousness and making available steel at competitive prices. He said the Steel Ministry's vision of 300 MMTPA production capacity in the near future will be supported by the demand generated by the urban development and civil aviation sectors.
By 2030, we will have 600 million people of our citizens living in urban areas. Now, this in and of itself presents fantastic opportunities for the steel industry.
HRD Ministry is now officially the Ministry of Education. President Ramnath Kovind gave assent to the change in the name of the ministry on Monday.
A Gazette notification published on Monday night said the President approved the name change from HRD Ministry to Ministry of Education. It was among the key recommendations of the draft new National Education Policy, which was cleared by the Union Cabinet last month. Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank said on Tuesday that the National Education Policy 2020 aims at making our nation a global knowledge superpower by transforming the curricular and pedagogical structure of education. Inaugurating the academic and faculty building of IIM Raipur, the minister said, the government's vision is to transform educational institutes into places of lifelong learning and development, positive engagement with the community, and developing leadership skills. He said these qualities will positively impact our community and the country.
And Union Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat met the Chief Ministers of Punjab and Haryana on Tuesday to discuss the SYL canal issue.
Opposing the Satluj-Yamuna link canal, Punjab Chief Minister Captain Amrinder Singh called it an emotive issue that could disturb national security. The Supreme Court had directed the meeting, asking both Chief Ministers last month to discuss the completion of the SYL canal. The canal has been in the works for several decades. Opposing the Satluj-Yamuna link canal, Punjab Chief Minister Captain Amrinder Singh called it an emotive issue that could disturb national security. The Supreme Court had directed the meeting, asking both Chief Ministers last month to discuss the completion of the SYL canal. The canal has been in the works for several decades.
News on India's relations with other countries, and Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla is on a 2-day tour to Bangladesh to boost bilateral ties between the two nations. Shringla is carrying a special message from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. He is also scheduled to meet Bangladesh Foreign Minister A.K. Abdul Momen. This is first visit by a senior Indian official to Bangladesh since travel restrictions were imposed due to the coronavirus pandemic. The meeting is aimed at resetting ties between India and Bangladesh. Bangladesh Prime Minister Hasina visited India last October, while Modi's planned visit to Bangladesh in March to take part in events marking the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was called off due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The two leaders have spoken on phone several times this year, most recently in May. An External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar held extensive talks with his UAE counterpart Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan on Monday, covering a wide range of areas including ways to further boost strategic ties and the situation in the neighborhood of both countries.
The virtual talks were held as part of the 13th session of the India-UAE Joint Commission meeting on trade, economic and technical cooperation. The Ministry of External Affairs said wide-ranging discussions were held in a friendly, frank and constructive atmosphere, reflecting the strong bilateral ties between the two partners. The Indian side invited further investments from the UAE in key sectors of the Indian economy, including infrastructure, logistics, food parks, highways, ports, airports, renewable energy and defense. The two sides also discussed regional issues pertaining to their neighborhoods and cooperations at the United Nations and other multilateral fora. The two sides welcomed the close cooperation during the last few months in the fight against COVID-19 and discussed a joint strategy to offset the economic and social impact of the pandemic on both countries. The UAE Foreign Minister had also made a phone call to EAM Jaishankar on Friday following finalization of his country's historic peace deal with Israel.
News from Uttar Pradesh. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has approved property damage claim tribunals in Meerut and Lucknow.
The Lucknow Tribunal will accept claim applications from Jhansi, Kanpur, Chitrakoot Dham, Lucknow, Ayodhya, Devi Patan Prayagraj, Azamgarh, Varanasi, Gorakhpur, Basti and Vindhyachal Dham divisions. The Meerut Tribunal will have jurisdiction over Saharanpur, Meerut, Aligarh, Moradabad, Bareilly and Agra divisions. Large-scale damage to public properties took place during the Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act protests in the state last year. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath had declared that the cost of damages will be recovered from the protesters. The state government promulgated an ordinance to set up tribunals to settle these claims.
Now an update on the flood situation across different states, and the flood situation in Bihar remains grim even as the Central Water Commission issued a flood advisory for several states, warning hilly districts in the north of likely flash floods and landslides. The advisory for Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh said that there is likelihood of rise in water levels in several rivers, including the Ganga, Sutlej, Ravi, Bias, Ghagar and Yamuna due to the heavy to very heavy rains forecast there.
In Bihar, the floods have affected nearly 82 lakh people in 16 districts. So far, 25 people have died in flood-related incidents. The water level in the Ganga continues to rise in Buxar, Munger, Bhagalpur, Kehelgaon and at Digha Ghat in Patna. Several other rivers including the Bagmati, Budi Gandak, Punpun, Khiroi and Ghagra are flowing above the danger level at different places in the state. In Uttar Pradesh, 788 villages across 15 districts are hit by floods. In the state's relief camps, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has directed officials to segregate those who have fever, cold and headache and get them tested for COVID-19. Widespread rainfall is likely over Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha and West Bengal in the next 4 to 5 days. In Maharashtra, water level of 3 rivers in Sangli has risen due to continuous rain, following which the district administration has asked people living near the banks to remain alert. 3 districts of Assam, Dhemaji, Lakhimpur and Baksa are still inundated with 11,900 people affected. Meanwhile, at least 7 people drowned in flooded water bodies in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Heavy to very heavy rainfall is likely to occur over northwest India, including the western Himalayan region till August 20th.
And that's the wrap on this edition of the 9 p.m. news. Thanks so much for watching. Take all the precautions and take good care of yourselves and your families during this coronavirus pandemic. Good night.
Thank you.